So first things first, Celine, how are you?
Very good, very good. Busy days, but good days. Yeah.
That's very good to hear. Yeah, you have an album coming out. But before we jump into the album, I'd like to jump back to the beginning. Now, I think you began playing music when you were quite young, and then you really started songwriting once you were given a guitar, age 14. Do you remember what that did for you and your creativity?
Yeah, I think I got my first guitar when I was 14, and I immediately started writing songs. And at the time, I was living with my mom, my stepdad, brother, and stepbrother. And with my guitar, I always found a way to like sneak into a little room and find some a peaceful setting to basically dive into my feelings and translate them into songs. So I really discovered that it's like a superpower. It's like maybe what meditation is for some people, was for me to like get away from high school, the family, all that stuff. So it gave me an opportunity to really like get in tune with myself and my inner world. So
Do you remember any of those very early songs?
I do, mostly love songs. Like I remember the first time I was in love with a guy. I think I was, well, probably 14 or 15 or something. And I wrote a song called Your Hands because we held hands once, and I was just like, oh, like the most amazing feeling in the world. And I wrote a little song, like a 3-chord song about it.
And like you said, it was kind of, it felt like you had a superpower. You had a way of dealing with these thoughts, or at least doing something creative with it. So when did it become something more? When did you started to share it with people?
Well, I think the very first time was when I was 16. I entered a local competition in Amsterdam called the Rozentuin. And I think that was one of the first times I actually shared it with like a live audience on a stage with microphones and amplification. So that was definitely the first bigger kind of more public thing. And then after high school, when I was 18, I started playing like pubs and small singer-songwriter cafes. I did open mics. So that all started when I was 18.
What did you learn by doing those things, by going to those open mics and then kind of just throwing yourself out there?
I think it gave me confidence. It made whatever it was I cooked up at home, it made it real in a way because I was sharing it with people and people were responding to it. So I think it gave me some confidence, and it became a more natural thing to sing in front of people. I think that is something you have to learn. Maybe some people are just like born like stars and they just walk on stage and they're like doing their thing. I was definitely not like that. I'm actually quite shy and like held back, and open mic nights and those sorts of events always showed me that I can actually write the songs I want to write and have a meaningful connection to the audience without having to be like this big performer. I just sat down with my guitar and I really enjoyed it too. So
with that in mind, how do you look back at the debut album?
Well, I mean, it was such a trip from those small cafes to the point where I was recording the album in Los Angeles, which also became a very big, like produced record with my band, a lot of synths and like big sounding record. So there was a whole journey to that album, releasing 2 more acoustic EPs. I worked with Think in the meantime. So the years before that were all very focused on like smaller, more acoustic songs. And then by the time I was making Free Fall, my first record, I really wanted to experiment with the bigger sounding music, and I imagined like a full band live show, and it just all it became a challenge, something I just wanted to figure out and see if it would suit me.
Now that you have made that album and you've made a second one now, do you feel like you found kind of the direction you wanted to head in? Because one thing I noticed in reading the bio on your website, I have to see if I wrote it down. But yeah, intimate but grand is kind of a description. So it's kind of what you mentioned, a combination of the two, kind of guitar, singer-songwriter music, but then there's also this grand sound to it.
Yeah, I think with this record, I feel like I really found the gouden middenweg, like the compromise, or not compromise, but like the perfect way to combine the acoustic with the like grand strings, big band, big sounding stuff. And I think I really love both. Like I can listen to acoustic artists as well as like huge sounding bands. And yeah, this record feels like I finally found that sweet spot. And there are songs in the album with like, I have one piano ballad that's super intimate, and then there's bigger sounding songs. And yeah, feels like I kind of found what I was looking for.
Did it change the way you wrote songs?
Maybe, yes. I think because the way I started out is I was always writing by myself. So just me and my guitar. And the first time I started co-writing was for Free Fall, for my first record. And this time around, I co-wrote 10 out of the 11 songs. So they're all songs, well, except for Found a Light, which is a very acoustic song. And I think you can hear, if you know my music, you kind of hear that like that's one of the songs I wrote by myself. And I think because of the collaborations, you always like, you come in, you have conversations and you start talking about music. Maybe you listen to some stuff before you start writing, and it opens your mind. Like I always see a lot of possibilities. Whereas when I'm writing by myself with my guitar, I just want the vocal and the chords to really work well. And it doesn't need much else. So it's a different process.
Yeah, you're working with obviously your own band, but then some other people like Tim Bran and Benjamin Reinlander. Were there specific people that you wanted to work with, or were there specific? Because I believe that Tim has worked with other bands like London Grammar, and were you looking for a certain type of producer?
Yeah, I think I was mostly looking for collaborations, for people to write with at first. So I went to London to meet new people, meet new writers, and see where it would take me. And in that search, I ended up with Tim Bran writing a song called Overflow on my first trip to London, and it just everything like fell into place. And he's an amazing producer. So I was a little overwhelmed. I was like walking into his studio, which is a really cute, nice, small space, nothing super extra. But then he had all these like London Grammar things on the wall, and like walking on cars, and like all these different huge bands that he's worked with. So it was funny because we actually really, really found a sweet spot in our collaboration. I think we both really loved the sound we were sort of unfolding, but at the same time, I was like, oh my god, he's also a pretty big name, and is he gonna like my stuff, or my song's good enough, all that stuff. So I think I was just looking for like the right connection and collaboration, and I found that with him. And yeah, it really helps that he's just great at what he does. So that was really exciting. And then Benjamin is also in my band. He's my drummer. And so that was really nice because he's a great producer and mixer, but he also knows my band. So he could just take our organic sound and really translate it really effortlessly into the sound that we were looking for. And I like that Tim and Ben are different producers. There's a big age difference, but I think in terms of taste and references, they work in similar vibes. They work in similar sounds. So yeah, it was nice to have the two experiences.
Mm. And then it does, the album does feel very together. So that makes like you said, you did find kind of the middle ground or the sweet spot.
Thank you.
With what you mentioned, Overflow, the song, the first trip that you took over there, what was that like? And how did that song kind of pop up out of nothing?
Yeah, it was weird. It was my first time in London in my life.
Okay.
So I had never been there. For some reason, I'd been to LA, to New York, I've been to Asia, I've done all sorts of things, but I'd never been to London. So first of all, I was just super impressed with the city and the vibe. And it just like a whole new world opened up. And I was just so excited because so much of the music I grew up listening to is from the UK. So it just felt like I was coming home, and I wrote with different writers in London, and it worked out really well. I loved all the sessions. I loved the people. And it's also different from the States, where there is actually a bigger cultural difference. I just felt so at home in London immediately. And so that first trip, I came over with a friend, and I just did a 1-day session with Tim, just seeing if it would work out. And we wrote Overflow, and I was just like, oh, this is the first song. Like I knew, like right there and then, I knew like this is the new direction, and this is going to be like a core song for whatever chapter is coming next. So yeah, that felt really great, and it gave me something to hold on to and to come back to whenever I was figuring out what kinds of songs I needed for the album. Like it was just like a core song for me.
What does the word overflow mean to you?
I think first of all, it reflects the idea, the feeling I got when I came to London of being overwhelmed, of having this huge city that was both exciting and a little just overwhelming. I'm a very sensitive person. I grew up in Amsterdam, and we always feel like that's a big city, but it's not. When you go to London, you know what a big city is. Like it's a completely different feeling. So I think that's one thing. And then there's also this idea of abundance, the idea that yeah, this is going to sound woo-woo, but it's like there's an abundance of love and creativity and new people you can meet that even if you don't know them are, at the right time in the right place for you to meet them. There was just like this whole feeling of abundance, this idea that there's enough for everyone, and
Sure.
for me as an artist, the idea that this entire city just opened up for me, it was just overwhelming and beautiful. And like with a lot of experiences like that, it's also scary, and it's like you kind of fall into a new world that's
Sure.
unknown. So yeah, I think that's, yeah.
But as a quick segue then, because I imagine this was before the whole COVID thing happened, and then the world shuts down, and then what you mentioned just now, this kind of collectiveness or creative collectiveness, sharing it with people, and then the abundance, as you mentioned, is gone. All of a sudden, we're stuck at home. So was it a difficult time as a creative person the last year and a half?
Yeah, of course it was difficult. I have to say I was very lucky that I'd done all the writing in the years before that. So okay. I had the album, like I had the songs, and they weren't like the production wasn't finished yet, but I already had that, ball of energy in my hands. Like I knew I had an album. So I was lucky that I could record and produce and mix the album in, during lockdown. So if I didn't have the songs at that point, it would have been a very different time for me. Because now, of course, all my shows were canceled and all that stuff. But I still had something to hold on to. So I feel very grateful for that. And I actually got to finish everything during that time. I worked with Tim remotely as well. So we wrote the songs in London, but then we had him on Zoom in the studio. So we recorded my band in Studio 150. It's a beautiful church studio in Amsterdam. And we had Tim there on a screen, communicating with everyone. We had a technical setup that made it possible for him to talk to whoever was playing. And like, he was like in everyone's monitoring system. And so it was interesting. And I wish it hadn't happened, but it's, we survived. We came out with. So.
What I find interesting that you mentioned Zoom, so that's kind of the beneficial application of technology to the modern world that we live in. But then I suppose in a song like Famous, you refer to kind of the other side of technology. So when did that song come up to you?
I also wrote that long before Corona. So Famous, I wrote with two guitarists in a tiny village just north of London. And I was sitting on the train and I came out of this huge city into like the Greenlands, this beautiful area. And their studio is in sorry, that's my phone. Their studio is like in between horse stables. Okay. So it's this really big contrast between the two worlds. And it just got me thinking, like, we live such virtual lives, and we have, especially me as an artist, the online world is just, you have to deal with it somehow. You have to be a part of it, even if you choose to use it, barely use it. It's still everywhere. So from streaming to videos to communication with your fans, everything's online now. So I'm not someone that really enjoys that side of being an artist. And I think most people don't even ask themselves if it's something they want to do. It's just there, and you just have to be on there to be part of the world, because that's the world today. So I started questioning, like, what is my relationship to this imagery, to my, what is this doing to my ego? What's this doing to my career? All these different aspects. So I was thinking about all that stuff when I was on the train to their studio, and we started talking about it, and then we wrote Famous. So
is there, because like you said, there is, and I always find this interesting to talk about with creative people, because there seems to be dichotomy between creativity and then the business side. And the business side, like you said, you have to be you have to be present on social media, you have to promote yourself, but then that has nothing to do, in a sense, with the creative aspect of writing a song and producing some nice music. So how do you balance these two things? And especially, I suppose, after, maybe it's a little bit different now after a year and a half where a lot of it was kind of silent in a way.
Yeah, I think one thing I learned is that I can't do both at the same time. I can't be on social media and promoting and doing calls with like my booking agent, or like doing all that sort of business stuff. Mm-hmm. I cannot combine that with the artistic side. So I can't do a writing session on the same day as I'm, filling out forums and emailing. And so I try to separate the two. And the thing is, because I'm an independent artist, I have my own team. I have a pretty big team now, but it is not with a bigger label. So I have to communicate with all these different people, and I have a lot of people helping me, which is great. But it's pretty intense at times. I think I just have to be really careful that it doesn't take over sometimes, because when I'm in the studio, I'm just like in the zone. But as soon as I walk out of the studio, or like the album is finished, and then you go into maybe photo shoots and making videos, then you make edits for socials, and then it's super intense. And I just I need to remind myself a lot that that side is not what it's all about, even though I care so much about my music, and that's why I need to promote it, and I want to promote it. And so it's necessary, but it's yeah, it's hard sometimes. I don't enjoy it as much. I really love
Right.
the studio and I love live. I love playing concerts with my band, being on the road. I love traveling. And so the business side is something I just have to do. And then I kind of get lost in it sometimes.
It's kind of a necessary evil in a way.
Exactly.
Well, it reminds me of one other song that I wanted to talk about, As Long As You Love Me, because, and then this is obviously about other things as well, but I can imagine that even doing the business side and stuff, well, when things are not looking good, or when you're, I can't find the right word, but when you're struggling in a way, to have somebody support you, or to know that it'll turn okay, it'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that song come from? Was that something specific that happened, or something
I think,
that you were
yeah.
dealing with?
Yeah. I like that you picked out that song because it's for me, it's also a very important song. It's so I've been with my partner, with my boyfriend for 8 years now, something like that. A very long time. And when I was writing this record, I was traveling a lot. I was going to London all the time. And, it's always been that way that I sometimes, take off and do my own thing. So I went to Los Angeles, I went to like Iceland. I've done all these trips without him. But it makes all the difference that I know he's there and that he's always there when I come back. So that's what that song is about. And it's also about a balance we found in letting each other go and really feeling safe enough and trusting each other enough to be away from each other for a while and then come back and, live life together and enjoy all the things together. But also, I think it's a healthy thing to have your own life always. So that's what that song is about. It's, everything would be different if maybe I wouldn't even live in the Netherlands if it wasn't for him as well. So I don't know.
Well, the way I read it, and this might be different as well, but it felt like just when your passion isn't as high, for instance, for whatever you're doing, either it can be music, can be romantic, can be anything. But then somebody can say a couple of words and they'll get you back in focus, or they'll remind you of why you're doing this. So, in essence, do you know why you're doing this? It's gonna sound weird, but
you mean making music?
Yes.
Ooh, wow. That's a very tough question.
It's
I think about it a lot, but sorry?
It's probably too grand a question. It's not easily
No, I
put
like
into
it.
words.
I like it. It's challenging. I think there's something that I found when I was very young in music that is there's this conviction I have that when I write music, when I write good music that is good to me, it feels like I'm creating something profound, something real, something that needs to exist. There's an urge I feel to make things. And I also like making other things other than music, but I think in music I found a way to, not just communicate with myself, but then to also facilitate maybe other people's feelings. I want music to be like it's almost like a medium for other people to then project their experiences and thoughts to. So I've always felt that it's worth something. It's there are so many jobs in the world where you can wonder, like, what if I didn't do this, would it make a difference? And I kind of feel in my music that even if it's for a very small group of people, it means something. It means something real. And I think I'm trying to always communicate with those people, with the few people that really listen and feel what I'm doing. And it's fine that not everybody hears or feels the same things when they listen to my music, but the people that do, I feel a very deep connection to them and to, when I play live as well. It's a magic thing. So it just keeps me going. And I can't really imagine life without it.
What is one reaction or to your music that somebody's had that you remember? Is there anything that sticks out? Something somebody said about the music that you made, or how they connected with it?
Well, I don't know. I get messages from people saying like I used it when I actually got a message this weekend of someone telling me they were going to use a recording of mine to walk down the aisle to get married to. So those things are very special. I think it's just, in general, it's just when people come up to me and tell me, sometimes they tell me their stories. They tell me about a divorce, or they lost someone, or they are, into personal growth and trying to figure themselves out. And they tell me that my music helps them reflect, or it helps them, get in tune with their inner world. I think those are the things that really resonate with me, because that's also what I'm looking for when I'm making it. So, yeah, I don't have one specific person or story.
Sure.
Like that. Yeah.
Final question then, with what you just mentioned and having finished the album Overflow, what do you, I don't know if this is a good question. Have you learned anything about yourself by making this album?
Oh, so much. Yeah. I learned so much from this record. I think, first of all, I learned to collaborate in new ways. With my last album, it was all like first times. It was my first time in rooms with other writers and producers, and it was just like this playground feeling. And now with this record, I learned to really get comfortable in sessions. So I didn't have to write songs alone to be in touch with myself. I could actually invite people in. And that's something that made my collaboration with Tim really special, is that he let me open up completely, and I felt so free. So that's something I learned with this record, that it's okay. And like with the right people, I can actually be just as vulnerable and open as I would writing myself. By myself. So that's one big thing. I think the other thing is, just because it's my second record, it gives me a perspective of, continuing to make records. So now it feels like I'm already thinking like, what would my third record sound like? And with Freefall, all I could think about was, oh my God, I made an album. What's going to happen? I don't know how this works. How am I going to do this? Who is going to work with me? I had all these insecurities. And with this record, it's just like, it's a next step, but it's also, it just makes me feel like, what else is there? What's going to be the next thing after this?
In a way, more confident.
Yeah, I think so. Or more at ease with the fact that it's just like an ongoing journey, and it's not, an album isn't the end result. It's just like it's just a specific moment. It's a moment in time, and when the record's out and we're going to tour it, I'm sure that in a year or 2 years I'll look back and wish I could change things about it. But it's a moment in time. So yeah, that feels, I don't know. I'm just learning to accept that, and I'm also excited for what the next thing will be like, having learned all this.
Well, we'll have to wait and see, because first it's this album, obviously. Celine, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you so much for having me.